Alright, it's here, the Galaxy S24 Fan Edition. And this time, it almost looks like Samsung did not make any compromises to make the FE close to the flagships. Listen to this. You still get the flagship design like the S24 series. Premium materials with flagship level durability. All AI features that the S24 and the foldable series came with this year. Bigger, brighter display than any FE phone before, more battery than before, and more importantly, an even better processor that is super close to the flagship chip in S24. But because it's the fan edition, there are some compromises, there are some corners cut, and we'll talk all about it, including that Exynos chip and the S24 FE pricing. But first, let's talk about how the phone feels when you get it and you hold it. So this is a bigger FE device. In fact, it's the biggest. So you enjoy a larger display, larger battery, and a bigger footprint. And like the S23 FE, this too has that matte finish aluminum frame, which feels really nice. And you get a glass back. I love it. It feels great in the hand. And the buttons too have just the right width that you can access and use easily. I mean, look, it's really just the small things, and I think it really matters. Now, owing to the bigger size, it can get a bit handful to use with one hand, especially because it is a wide phone. But hey, you get a larger display too, right? And from a durability standpoint, I think it's right up there. It's got IP68 water and dust resistance, which is the highest you see on any flagship that's out there. And it's got Gorilla Glass Victus Plus on both the front and the back glass. And that, I think, is a big upgrade from the S23 FE, which I think had Gorilla Glass 5 on it. Couple of other things, you get a dual SIM tray with no option to put in a micro SD card. It does support eSIM, and it's got stereo speakers with Dolby Atmos options for you to choose. Though I do have one thought here. You know, the FE series, it held that really sweet spot of 6.3-inch to 6.4-inch displays, which now very few Android phones have. And now this too is in that big display segment. In fact, it stacks right up with the Galaxy S24 Plus in terms of size. But you know what's really interesting is that despite having a larger battery and a larger size, it's only 4 grams heavier than the S23 FE. Now, did they cut any corners as compared to the flagships? Well, first it's got Gorilla Glass Victus Plus and not the Victus 2 as on the S24 flagship series. And second, the back is still glass, but not the same matte textured glass you see on the flagship models, which I personally prefer. But again, these are very minor cutbacks to bring a really good device at a lower price. And once you put on a case, which you will, then these things will matter even less. So these are not really deal breakers in my opinion. Okay, moving on to display. And it's a fabulous display. It's 6.7-inch this time, so it's significantly bigger than what we saw in the S23 FE, which was at 6.4 inches. And it's pretty much the same display tech that you get in flagships. You know, you get dynamic AMOLED 2X, 120Hz refresh rate, very vibrant, and it's also got vision booster. And trust me when I say this, I've used it in peak outdoors sun, and not once did I face any issue. The bezels do feel lesser compared to the S23 FE, and as it should. You know, it's a larger display, so the bezels do feel relatively lesser. But could they be reduced further? Well, always, and we would love that. So Samsung, if you're listening, reduce the bezels even more for the fans next time. Anyway, what corners have been cut on the display front? Well, it's 2 minor things in my opinion. First, while it's the same size as the S24 Plus, it does have a lower resolution display. But honestly, I think that's better because you'll hardly notice any visible difference, but you do get significant battery savings. And lastly, it's not an LTPO display. It switches between 60Hz and 120Hz instead of 1Hz to 120Hz. And I think that's the one thing that the S24 FE can really benefit from. But otherwise, it's right there as a flagship level display. Now, let's come to the point that everyone wants to talk about, that Exynos chip inside. So it's got Exynos 2400E, a very close twin of the flagship Exynos 2400, but it scored a little less in exams. And so practically speaking, you will never see or feel a big performance difference in the S24 FE and let's say the S24 Plus, which does have the flagship Exynos 2400. So everything you do will feel nearly as fast or snappy. It's got 8 gigs of RAM, which is sufficient. Sure, more is better, but 8 gigs technically is sufficient for 95% of the things that you really want to do every day on your phone. Now, people generally have complaints with regards to heating. So I measured the temperature before gaming, which was about 32-33 degrees Celsius, and then I gamed for about 60 minutes on high graphic settings and high frame rate. And I chose a multiplayer game so that I could, also test network reliability during gaming. And while everything ran super smooth without any kind of lag, I was more impressed with the graphic quality. And after about 60 minutes, I checked the temperature, which was about 36-38 degrees Celsius, well within comfortable range. It's only when your device goes above 40 degrees Celsius. That's when it starts to feel a little uncomfortable. And I believe the 11% larger vapor chamber cools more efficiently than the S23 FE did. So, what corners are being cut in the performance department? Well, it's really just a downclocked version of the Exynos 2400, but it very much has the flagship spirit of the Exynos 2400. And so with this chip, you can look at higher efficiencies instead of higher peak performance. The only issue I feel with the Exynos chip is that it typically heats up slightly quicker than an equivalent Snapdragon chip, especially when you use the camera for too long. And also a reason why Samsung increases the vapor chamber size year on year. But other than that, from an everyday usage standpoint, it is supremely capable, and I think the Exynos chips have come a long way. And now, let's talk about the cameras. So on paper, it's the same setup as the Galaxy S23 FE. You get a 50 megapixel primary camera with OIS, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and an 8 megapixel 3x telephoto camera. But then, with the better chip, Galaxy AI, optimized algos, this may have just done really well. Let's look at the samples. And by the way, all of these samples can be downloaded from the link in the description below. Now, it's clear that photos are nice, colors are punchy, they look real good, and definitely not too oversaturated. Even the greens, they look natural, not overly green or over-sharpened. Even the skies, they seem pretty well balanced and close to what I saw with my eyes at the time of taking these photos. I also took some portrait shots to test out the edge detection and the focus fall off, and I believe the edge detection was really on point. The camera identified the subject quite well enough and really brings it out. For example, I love how this shot came out, especially with the sun at the back, and I think the phone really handled it well. But this is one tricky picture where the chain underneath the fire hose couldn't be detected, but hopefully with some updates this may improve. And when it came to human portraits, it was pretty accurate, be it harsh lighting on my face or soft, subtle lighting as you see in this one. And I also tried to take some portrait shots in low light and really surprised at how well this one turned out. But even indoors when lighting is not as bright, the subject identification was on point. Overall, I think very good portrait photos. And then I slowly moved into late evening when, light started to dim down, and here's what the pictures look like. I think the optimization is pretty good. There isn't any noise in these low light photos, which is great. Lights don't get overexposed or they don't bloom, so that's handled quite well. And guys, even the indoor shots, they seem quite nice. It handled harsh spotlights well enough, as you can see in this photo. But yeah, just feel free to download all these pictures from the link in the description and just evaluate these photos for yourself. Jumping on to the ultra-wide photos, and mostly they're well detailed, they're quite consistent with the primary lens photos in terms of white balance. But the ultra-wide does take slightly warm and contrasty photos as compared to the primary lens, which I don't think is a bad thing. I like a little punch to my photos and I'm all for it. I also use the 3x telephoto lens, so this is a 1x and this is a 3x from the same spot. Quite sharp in my opinion despite the low light. And here's the popular Qutb Minar, and I zoomed in 3x and 10x and then 20x, and honestly I think up until 10x it's actually quite usable, so that is quite sweet. And I think selfies were easily one of my favorite photos. Whether it was the sun behind me or hitting me from the side, I got well-balanced skin tones, very true to life, colors looked really good, and even the dynamic range seemed to surprise me. Lastly, video capability. So here's a 4K video sample shot at 30 FPS, and if you notice, it's actually very stable. I mean, no gimbal. It quickly adapts to changing light and brings the exposure and highlights down to better suit what you are trying to shoot in a very gradual, natural way. Even in late evening or low light situations, I was happy to see little to no noise in the footage. And yes, it can shoot 4K videos in portrait mode just like the flagships can, as you can see right here. Alright guys, so this is a video sample shot using the S24 FE using the front-facing camera, and this is all in 4K. I'm not using any third-party microphones, so this is how it sounds when you use the mics right out of the camera. And it's actually quite dull right now. It's like 5:30 in the evening, so it's not very bright. Whatever you see is what you see. So yeah. Also, if you must know, the S24 FE can record 8K at 30 FPS now as compared to the 24 FPS in the last year's S23 FE. And so that makes 8K even more usable now. But all in all, I'm quite impressed with the Galaxy S24 FE cameras this time, and with future updates and improvement in algos, I think these pictures will come out even better. Now, coming to the software, and I think this is where Samsung has really nailed it with the S24 FE. They haven't left anything out. In fact, even on the FE, they're going all out to ensure you get 7 generations of OS upgrades and 7 years of security updates. So, you get Android 14 with the latest One UI 6.1, and it's full of Samsung goodies. All the ecosystem features you see here, and it even supports Samsung DeX. which, if you must know, is only supported by flagship level processors. Plus, all of the AI features that Samsung launched with the S24 series and the Flip Fold this year, they are all in it. So be it circle to search to know more about things you find interesting on the web, sketch to image to make something from scratch, or just to add something to an existing image. It can also do live translation, so you can converse with someone in a foreign language in real time, and it supports interpreter mode to be able to talk to someone who's in front of you speaking another language. And yep, it supports the majority of popular languages that you might need, especially when you're traveling. And definitely you get all the other AI goodies, right? Like chat assist, note assist, browsing assist, transcript assist, photo assist, and so on. In fact, I've done a detailed video. I'll leave a card here. So if you're interested, you can go through that. And guys, seriously, very smooth performance, okay? It's snappy as any other Samsung flagship out there, and you will not be disappointed. So any corners being cut on the software front? Actually, no, it's all there, okay? Lastly, let's talk about battery. So it's got a 4700 mAh battery capacity this time, slightly more than last year's S23 FE. In fact, if you see, compared to the last year S23 FE, there's an increase in the claimed video playback time, the audio playback time, and the internet usage time on both LTE and Wi-Fi. Now, personally, I've been getting somewhere between 5 to 6 hours of screen on time. But again, I've just used it for a few days, and Samsung phones tend to optimize the battery. It learns your usage pattern over time and it gets a little better. So if I'm being very optimistic, I guess you can add another 30 minutes on top of the 5 to 6 hours. However, you only still get 25 watts of wired charging, which I do believe Samsung should really start looking into and give 45 watts minimum across all its phones. Oh, and yes, there is support for wireless charging as well, and it does reverse charge. So if you connect a Type-C cable to charge another device, it would lend its battery. The only thing that I found a little weird is that this is the same size as the S24 Plus, which has a 4900 mAh battery, and this one has 4700 mAh. Why, Samsung? Why didn't you just put the same battery? Anyway, now let's talk about what decides all of this. Now, in the beginning, I said that Samsung almost made no compromises with the S24 FE this time, but the pricing is where it gets a little tricky. Let me explain. Look, the S24 FE is priced at about 60,000 right now. Honestly, you can get the Galaxy S24 for about the same price. And so one can think about waiting out for a couple of months and then getting this at a slightly better price. And sure, that's one way to go about it. But there's one other way to think about it. This is essentially a Galaxy S24, but with a larger display, larger battery, and near same performance with every software feature the S24 series ships with. Almost like the Galaxy S24 Plus, but with a smaller price tag. So it really all depends on how you perceive the pricing, right? But yeah, Samsung is selling the 256GB variant for the same price as that of the 128GB variant. So if in case you do plan to, get this phone right away, you might not want to miss out on that either. All right, there you have it, guys. Everything about the Galaxy S24 FE. If you guys still have any questions, thoughts, comments, please shoot them in the comment section and I'll definitely help you guys out. And if you guys did enjoy watching the video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification icon, and mark all. Really helps the channel grow. I'll see you guys in the next one.